Listen closely. One quiet choice can change a life. Stay to the end. A storm will break, a fire will chase them, and a miracle will cry out loud. At dusk, in a dry town, coins hit a table. Clara watched her mother sweep the money into a cloth bag. No blessing, no hug. Just, "He'll feed you." Then the woman turned toward the saloon lamps, already done with her daughter. Clara's belly was near time. The baby shifted like a slow fish. She kept a hand there, not to soothe but to steady. She would not cry. Tears had cost her before. The stranger stood spare as a fence post. Hat low, coat dusted with road. He counted the last coin by touch and said, "I need quiet." His name, she would learn, was Elias. His glance was not hungry. It was winter, cold, clean, held back. A paper was signed. Clara's mother pushed her forward. "Go on?" Clara stepped past Elias into the evening air that bit the skin. A wagon waited. One horse breathed clouds. Elias checked the harness twice, then twice again. He moved like a man who fixed things alone. Clara climbed up slowly, careful of her back. The seat was narrow and hard. A small blade rested hidden against her thigh. Elias clicked his tongue. The wagon rolled. The town fell away, lantern by lantern, until the road was only pale dust and wheel song. They did not speak for a time. Fences thinned and vanished. The baby pressed under her ribs. She counted 6 slow breaths until the tightness passed. "There's food in the sack," Elias said, eyes on the road. "If you want." "Thank you," she said. The biscuit tasted of lard and smoke and something close to safe. Gray shapes lifted on a rise, a small herd. A boy rode guard and tipped his hat. Elias raised 2 fingers, nothing more. Work waited out here. Few neighbors. "Do you have a wife?" The question slipped free. "No," he said. Then after a pause, "Not now." She pulled her shawl tight. "I won't be trouble." "I can cook. I can sew. I don't need much," he said. "I don't keep a crowd." Leather creaked as he guided the horse around ruts and stone. The road climbed into darker ground. Damp air rose ahead. She smelled water, then heard it. The river talking. Elias turned toward a ford. Stones showed like a path. Wheels bumped. Moonlight broke and slid away. On the far bank, rock and sage took the last light. The baby shifted. "How far?" she asked. "An hour," he said. Then, "The house is plain. There's a room made ready, made ready." The words moved into her like broth. She pictured a bed that did not stink. A door that locked from the inside. Maybe lavender at the window. She did not let herself hope more. Want was soft. Soft broke, they topped a ridge. Below lay a low house of timber and stone. A line of sheds, a small orchard whispering without wind. A single lamp burned behind one window. Elias set the brake, climbed down, and came around. He lifted his hands to help, then lowered them. "Step carefully," he said. Inside, the air held lye and pine. Floorboards were scrubbed pale. On a shelf, a framed photo. A gentle-eyed woman with a baby in a white gown. A thin crack ran across the glass like a healed cut. "This way," Elias said. He opened a door to a small room. A clean quilt lay on a narrow bed. Light cloth breathed at the window. On the table, a tin cup of water and a sprig of lavender in a blue jar. Clara felt the room reach toward her without words. She set down her bag. She pressed the mattress, firm, real. She could have wept. She swallowed and stayed quiet. "You can lock the door," Elias said from the hall. "I rise early. There'll be porridge. If you need, knock." "Thank you," she said. He stepped away, footfalls measured as if he knew how not to wake someone. The house settled around her with a slow, safe breath. In the quiet, she heard leaves brush and the faint tick of cooling iron. She drew the blade from her garter and slid it under the pillow. Not for him, not tonight. Having it meant the past could not sit so close. She lay back and set both hands on her belly. "Little one," she whispered, "we have a room." Through the window, a single star burned over the black hills. She did not trust the future. She trusted this small thing. A door she could close, a man who did not touch, a house that smelled of soap and lavender. In the held breath of the place, she let a thin thread of belief form. Quiet might hold. Tonight, that was enough for her to breathe and rest. Morning came pale and thin. Clara woke to the smell of oats and wood smoke. For a moment, she did not know the room. Then she saw the lavender sprig and remembered the road and the quiet promise. The baby pushed once as if to say, "I remember too." She washed at the basin, combed her hair, and tied it back. The quilt had held her all night. She checked the blade beneath the pillow and slipped it into her garter. Not fear. Habit. In the kitchen, Elias stood by the stove, shaved, clean shirt. He ladled porridge into 2 bowls and set one near the end of the table, as if he always ate that way, space kept simple and calm. "There's honey," he said. "Thank you," she said. The sweetness rose slowly. Her stomach remembered hunger. Elias ate without noise. He did not pray out loud, but his head bent a moment. On the shelf, the photo faced the room. A gentle-eyed woman and a baby in a white gown. "I can help after breakfast," she said. "Chores, whatever you need." "You don't have to hurry," he said. "Move carefully. Doctor's 3 hours if it comes to it. I can ride fast." She felt the words settle. He had thought beyond himself. "I worked in a boarding house," she said. "I can scrub. I can keep books a little." "Books I keep," he said. "But the stove is yours." He rinsed his bowl. "One thing," he added. "I keep a quiet home. Not cruel, just quiet." "I can be quiet," she said. "Coffee's on the shelf. The key to the root cellar hangs by the door. The neighbor from the south rides by sometimes. You don't owe him a talk?" "I won't," she said. "I'll be with the calves. Holler if you need." He paused, then stepped into the light. The house hummed with tasks. Clara opened windows to let the night out and the pale cold in. She scrubbed the sink until it shone and shook the quilts. She found linens folded straight as if someone had measured grief inch by inch. She did not unfold the very small clothes. In the front room, a shelf held 3 Bibles, a book of poems, and a ledger. A jar of dried rose hips sat near a tin of nails. On the mantel lay 7 smooth white stones lined up like eggs. She touched one and felt the cool truth of it. Her belly tightened and let go. She breathed slowly and counted. "Not yet," she told the child. She carried the wash to the line. On the far slope, Elias moved, small, steady, sure. He fixed a fence post, shoulders working with patient force. Some men shout their strength. He used it like a quiet tool. Back inside, her eyes returned to the photo. The woman's dress had a lace collar. "Love has hours sewn into it," she whispered without meaning to. "I will not break your things." Near noon, hoofbeats, too fast. Through the window she saw a man with a bright scarf and a grin meant to pass for friendly. He swung down and rapped the door hard. She opened it only a crack. "Yes? Afternoon, miss," he sang. "Is Elias around?" "I brought sugar." He shook a small sack. "Elias is working," she said. "Name's Pike," he said, leaning to peer past her. His eyes dropped to her belly. "Heard the ranch got a new lady." "You were not invited," she said. Her hand, unseen, found her blade. Pike smirked. "He buys a girl and calls her wife. Town will talk." He nudged a boot across the sill. The door held. "Leave," she said. Boots thudded on the yard. Elias walked up and set himself between Pike and the door, as simple as a fence going up. "You're off my land," he said. No rise in his voice. "Just truth." Pike laughed, but not deeply. "Easy, neighbor." "Brought sugar." "Take it," Elias said, "and your talk. Ride home." They held eyes for no breath. Pike broke first. He tossed the sack so it split on the dirt, then swung up to his saddle. "Keep your quiet," he called, and wheeled his horse away. Elias watched until the dust settled. Then he turned to Clara. "You all right?" "I am," she said. Her knees had trembled without her knowing. She made them still. He lifted the torn sugar. He would not waste even what came ugly. "You don't owe him a word," he said. "You don't owe any man," she nodded. Fear and relief moved through her together. In the silence that followed, the house became theirs again, if only for now. She reached for the broom. He reached for the bridle. Work like prayer steadied the day. Afternoon faded clean and level. Evening held after Pike left, but the quiet felt thin. Clara moved, finishing tasks. She washed bowls. She folded the towel. The baby turned under her ribs. Elias said little. He mended a halter, checked hinges, and set a pail beneath a drip. At dusk, he set a sack of potatoes on the table. For stew, he said. She made a pot with onion and salt. They ate at opposite ends. The broth was honest, but it did not calm what woke in her. In the shelf glass, her own eyes looked back at her. He bought you, the look said. Elias rinsed his bowl and reached for his coat. Snow by midnight, he said. I'll tarp the hay. Clara went to the small room. She ran a thumb along the quilt seam. She wanted the lavender to mean promise, the key to mean trust, not control. She slid the blade from her garter and set it on the table. She opened her bag and counted what she owned. 2 dresses, a comb, a tin of salve, a ribbon, 3 coins, a paper with a child's careful hand. Not much, enough to run. Wind pressed a cold palm to the window. The house gave a low creak. She sat in the dark, listening to the barn door and his steps in the yard. She imagined Pike's grin spreading through town. She imagined women whispering. She would not be a story in their mouths. She dressed in layers. Chemise, dress, shawl, Elias's spare coat. Heavy, smelling of smoke. She tucked ribbon, salve, and coins into her bag, wrapped bread in a cloth, slid the blade back, and eased on her boots. At the shelf, she looked again at the photo, the gentle-eyed woman and the baby. Forgive me, she said to the quiet room. I can't stay to learn if his silence is kind. She pressed her palm to her belly. We move, little one. She wrote 2 words, thank you, and left them under the honey tin. The latch lifted without a sound. Night met her, raw on the tongue. Snow had begun. The yard lay pale, the shed smudges, the orchard a black lace. From the barn came a faint jingle. Elias's lantern bobbed and went dark. Clara kept to the fence line, placing her feet where the grass made low humps. The baby shifted. Quiet now, she whispered. Past the orchard, the ground tilted toward the river. She aimed for the ford, where stones showed like a memory. Wind sharpened. Snow thickened. She pulled the coat tight and tasted lye. It steadied her. She was not lost. She was leaving. Behind, the lamp in her small window burned once, twice, then went out. She hoped he had not seen. She hoped he would not follow. She hoped he would. The fence corner drifted. She climbed over, slow as a prayer. The board groaned. She froze. Only snow answered. At the river, the stones were slick with ice. Water talked low. She set her boot to the first rock, then the second. The third rolled. She caught herself on a cold boulder. Breath gone. The baby hardballed once, and a band of tightness held. She waited it out, teeth on her lip. When it eased, she laughed once. Not now, she said. Snow found her hair and melted. Her fingers numbed. She crossed the last stones, boots taking water. On the far bank, the sage stood like a ghost. She turned up the path toward the ridge that hid the road. Wind struck the hill and filled her ears. The world narrowed to 1 step, then 1 more. She counted 10, then 10 again. The tightness returned. Deeper. A belt she could not loosen. She leaned against a juniper and breathed in through the nose, out slowly. It eased. She tried to think clearly. The boarding house might have light. She could trade the ribbon for space by the stove. She could wait there for the birth. After, she would find a way. Snow thickened. Footprints filled as she walked. The ridgeline loomed, black and white. Brush caught her boot. She stumbled to her knees. She tried to rise, and her legs shook. The next tightening took her. She clutched her belly and rocked small, strong motions. Hold on, she whispered. Hold on. We're going to light. Snow slanted harder, needling her cheeks. In the gusts, she heard the river again. A low iron song, and felt how big the dark land was and how small she and the child were out here. She lifted her head. Through the white, she saw a shadow on the lower slope. Maybe a man or a swaying tree. She did not call. Fear opened her mouth. Help, she said, and it broke in the storm. The shadow paused, then came on. Snow hid the figure until a ring of lantern light revealed him. Elias came on without shouting. He planted the lantern in the drift so both hands were free and held his palms open. The way you would calm a skittish mare. "Clara," he said, steady. Her knees were soaked. Cold climbed her legs. "I'm going," she managed. "All right," he said. "Can you stand?" She tried and failed. He offered his arm, not a grab. She used it and rose. The belt of pain around her middle loosened. Fear did not. "The ford's icing," he said. "Lower path. I can walk. You can." He slid her bag over his shoulder. They moved together. He kept himself on the drop side, a wall between her and the fall. At the stones, he stepped first, testing each with his boot, holding the lantern low so the river showed its teeth. "Slow," he said. "Breathe when it tightens," she did. On the last rock, her foot slipped. He caught her weight exact, then let go the moment she had it. Yard light trembled through the snow. The orchard whispered. Inside, heat lifted like a hand. He shut the door, hung the lantern, and shook off the weather. "I left a note," she said. "I saw," he answered, setting her bag on a chair. "Sit, towels." She stayed standing. Shame heated her face. "You bought me," she said to the stove. "I paid your mother to stop her hand," he said, putting the kettle on. "I don't own people." Another wave bent her. She took the table edge. He matched her breath until it eased, then stepped back and gave her space. "The doctor's wife taught me some," he said. "Could be hours. It could be soon. I can ride for him." She nodded. He opened a door to a side room. Warmer here. A cot, a clean quilt, a basin, soft cloths folded square. On the shelf lay a tiny white dress with a blue stitch at the neck. Her breath caught. "We had a girl once," he said, voice level. "There are 7 small markers on the ridge. After the ground froze, I kept quiet so my breath would last. The tiny dress stopped being a warning. It became a witness. Clara had wanted his silence to be a verdict on her. It was grief learning to stand. "I thought you were cruel," she said. "I know," he said. A longer pain pushed her to her knees. He moved without rush. Basin closer, kettle ready, cool cloth on her neck. When it passed, he rolled a blanket behind her back and gave her his sleeve to bite if she needed. Between waves, she told small truths because big ones would break. "Boarding house," she said. "Burned coffee, quarrels, my mother's hand is fast." He listened with his hands, feeding kindling, opening the damper, pulling the clock a hair forward. "When they are close," he said, "we choose. The doctor is far. There's a stone hut on the ridge. Holds heat quickly." "The hut," she said. The word felt safe. "We watch first," he said, and gave her a wool scarf that smelled of soap and smoke. Snow beat a soft drum on the window. In a lull, she looked again at the tiny dress. 7, she whispered. "After the 3rd, we planted roses," he said. "They didn't take." "Maybe again," she said, surprised by the word again. "Maybe," he said. The pains found a rhythm, far enough apart to time, close enough to respect. He marked them by breath and by the stove's ticks. Her fear changed shape, still there but edged, holdable. "I ran," she said. "I thought I had to prove I could keep myself." "You did," he said. "You came this far alone." He brought bread with honey and held the cup while she sipped. Another wave came, harder. She reached without thinking. His forearm was there, fabric rough, bone steady. She breathed through it. When it passed, he set his hand flat on the table. "If you choose to go tomorrow, I'll hitch at first light and take you where you want," he said. "Tonight we get you through." Something unknotted under her ribs that was not the child. The tiny dress watched, white and brave. Clara set her hand on her belly. She was not safe forever. She was safe for now. "Tell me the hut," she said. "Low roof," he said. "Stone walls. A stove that draws, a cot and matches in a jar. Door faces away from the wind. Good," she said. "If we go there." "We'll know when we know," he said. They waited together, counting by breath and fire ticks. 2 people in a small warm room. while outside the world turned white and the road back to town slid away. By dawn, the snow softened to a quiet shine. Clara had slept in short pieces, waking, breathing, counting. The pains had eased, like wolves that decide to circle instead of strike. The kettle sang. Elias poured hot water into the basin and wrung a cloth until it no longer dripped. "You're steady," he said. "Eat if you can." She took bread with honey. It felt like a blessing you could hold. The tiny white dress on the shelf seemed brighter in morning light. "I want to see the ridge," she said. He did not ask why. He tied on his coat and set a scarf around her shoulders, careful and sure. Outside, the yard glowed. They walked slowly, stopping when a tightness asked her to. He waited without showing hurry. At the fence, he lifted the wire and held it for her to pass. He let it fall after, not a snap, a lay. The ridge rose behind the house, low and even, cut by deer trails and rain lines. Wind touched it, then quieted. Elias led her by a path made by habit. At the top, snow lay thin on a flat of ground. 7 markers stood, small stones upright, each with a notch. The last was newer, scrape marks still raw. Clara touched the first stone with 2 fingers. "Tell me their names," she said. "We didn't name the first 3, he answered. "Saved the names for the ones who stayed. After the 4th we learned. The 5th we called Mercy. The 6th, Abel. The 7th, the preacher named her Hope, and I didn't stop him." Clara listened to the wind move around the stones. "I'm sorry," she said, and the words did not feel small. Elias brushed snow from the newest marker. "I thought if I didn't speak, the house would keep its heat," he said. "But silence is not a stove." She looked at his knuckles, red from cold, strong with use. Something behind her ribs bent toward him. "If I stay," she said, tasting the if, "we could try roses again." He lifted his head. The word again hung in the air. "They fail most years," he said. "Soil runs thin. Wind takes the buds. Maybe this year," she said. "With stones to hold heat. With ash turned in." He studied the ridge face, how it caught the sun, how the wind crossed. "Here," he said at last, and he smiled, brief as a bird. They chose a patch below the markers where the snow went first. Elias fetched a spade from the shed, its handle worn to the shape of his hand. He cut small squares and turned the earth. It smelled of iron and wet leaves. Clara crouched and broke clods with her glove. Together they built a low wall of stones to hold the bed. "We'll need bulbs," he said. "I have 3 coins, she said. "I can trade mending for the rest." "You keep your coins," he said. "There's an old bush behind the preacher's. He'll give cuttings." "He will if you ask," she said. Elias looked at the markers, then at her. "He will if we ask," he said. They worked until her breath shortened. He offered his arm, and she used it without pride or shame. Inside, she warmed her hands on the kettle. He set the spade by the door and knocked loose the last clods. "I keep the rules of quiet," he said, "but I can learn to speak enough." "I keep the rules of leaving," she said, "but I can learn to stay enough." The baby rolled. Not a warning now, more a turn toward the sound of their voices. Clara rested a palm there and felt the small reply. Son laid a coin of light on the table. Elias brought a small paper packet. Inside lay 3 rose hips, dried and red as held breath. "From the old bush a year back," he said. "I kept them and then forgot to try." "Not foolish," she said. "Just waiting." They set the hips on a saucer. Elias poured warm water and let them swell. He fetched a jar, a rag, and a bit of string. "If any take," he said. "We'll have color up there by summer's end." "And if they don't," she said, "we try again." He nodded. Outside, a breeze lifted and dropped. The house held a new kind of quiet, the kind that makes a place feel awake. "Thank you for the ride," she said. "Thank you for the word again," he said. They sat with the saucer between them like a small fire and let the silence be warm and alive. In the morning, they would walk to the preacher's gate, ask for cuttings, and carry them home. On the ridge, they would plant and try and remember. Days learned their shape. Morning light warmed the kitchen wall. Clara swept, cooked, and paused when her belly tightened. Elias sawed planks for a pen, fixed latches and spoke in short lines that landed softly. They moved like two hands on one task. They walked to the preacher's gate when the road thawed. The fence was white, chipped by the wind. An old rose climbed a trellis and held on. The preacher met them in a coat. His wife stood behind him, kind and sharp. "We came for cuttings," Elias said, "if you have some to spare." "For your ride," the preacher said. The wife's eyes softened toward Clara's belly. "We will try," Clara said. The wife brought shears and a jar. "Take from new growth," she said. "Life likes to grow from life." She pressed Clara's hand around the jar. "Keep them damp. Plant when the ground gives." "Thank you," Clara said. On the way home, the wind slid over the river. Elias carried the jar as if it were a clock. At the slope, he hesitated. "We could stop first at the ridge," he said. "We could," she said. They set the cuttings by the low stone wall. Elias tested the soil. "It wants more warmth," he said. "It will come," she said. She tucked straw around the bed, a small nest against the late cold. Work filled the days. She mended shirts and set onions to cure. She aired the tiny dress and folded it again. He fenced calves and straightened a porch beam. At noon, he left his boots outside so he would not track mud. It was a small thing. It meant everything to her. Afternoons, when sun met snow and made mist, they sat by the hearth with a book of poems. Clara read the plain ones aloud. Elias listened to how the lines held breath and sometimes nodded, once they saw Pike ride the far fence. He tipped 2 fingers and wrote on. Elias set another nail in the gate and let the hammer speak. At the ridge they turned soil and added stove ash. Birds started small songs in the orchard. Elias set a cane for each cutting and left cloth ties ready. Clara ringed the bed with flat stones to drink the sun and give it back at night. Her belly rolled like a slow fish. "Soon," she told the child. The word was not fear now. It was a promise with work behind it. One dusk, when the sky turned purple, they stood by the stones and looked down at the house. Smoke rode a thin line above the chimney. The lamp in her window was steady. "I think we should choose a name," Clara said. Elias turned his hat in his hands. "Names bind," he said. "They also bless," she said. He looked at the tiny dress, then at the markers. He breathed out. "If it's a girl," he said, "Rose, for the ridge we're trying. For what we hope will hold." Clara's throat went tight, the good kind. "Rose," she said, testing the sound. It fit the work. The baby moved as if she knew and liked its shape. "If it's a boy," he added, "we can wait and see him." "We can," she said. They carried water to the bed. Elias poured slowly. She held the canes in place. After, he fixed a small sign with a single word burned in with a hot nail. Rose. In the kitchen, they ate stew and bread. She taught him to pinch dumplings so they would float. He set a hook inside her door for her shawl. She darned his socks and left them on the step without a note. Evening settled easily. The house learned them. The clock ticked slowly. Sometimes late, she heard Elias step to the shelf. She knew he touched one of the 7 white stones and then set it back. One warm day found them by the lower pasture fixing wire. "Smell that?" Elias asked. "Pine and dust," she said. "And a dry note," he said. "Wind's coming back. We'll cut a break around the sheds." He walked the line with his eyes, measuring where fire would run if it started. His care did not make fear rise in her. It made trust deepen. That night stars came clear. The baby pushed and then settled low. Clara lay with both hands on her belly and spoke the name again, softly. Rose. It made the room feel rooted. The cuttings rested under straw. The sign waited on its stake. The quiet that held them was not empty. It was full of work, careful plans, and a name that felt like light. Calm came and sat with them, and for a long hour the world did not ask for anything more tonight. Afternoon came like a calm held in 2 hands. The roses slept under straw. The sky was a clean blue pan. Clara hummed while she kneaded dough. Elias stacked tools by the shed and sharpened the spade, quiet as always, but his shoulders seemed looser. They ate early. Dumplings floated. He set his hat on the peg inside her door, a small trust. After, they checked the fire break he had cut around the sheds, a bare ring wide as a wagon turn. "Good," he said. "Good," she echoed. They paused by the ridge. The little sign rose, stood straight, as if it had grown there on its own. Wind slid past without bite. Near evening, Elias lifted his head like a deer. "Hear that?" At first, only the river and a hawk. Then a far rough sound like many small hands rubbing. "What is it?" "Wind and brush," he said, eyes west. "Dry lightnings lately." "If a spark found cheatgrass—" He did not finish. He filled barrels and set them by the porch. He soaked burlap and hung it over the rail. Clara carried jars inside and laid blankets by the door. She smoothed the tiny dress on the shelf, asking it to wait. The baby rolled and pressed low. "Soon," she whispered. Dusk went fast. Wind moaned. A scent came thin at first, then sure, resin and ash. Smoke slid over the river like a gray hand. Elias studied the horizon. "West Ridge," he said. "2 draws over." She saw it then, a dirty cloud with a moving red seam. It crawled up the hill like a beast waking. "I'll hitch the wagon," he said. "If we go to the stone hut." He looked from her belly to her face. "Can you walk if we must?" "I can," she said. He brought the horse close, calm with touch and words. He set pails, a shovel, a blanket, and the axe in the wagon. He tied a scarf over his mouth and handed her another. Smoke claws. They wetted burlap and tacked strips inside the windows. Clara pressed a damp cloth to her throat. The baby kicked hard, a drummer in the dark. She breathed through a band of pain, counting. "Closer," Elias said. Embers began to fall, dying on the bare ring. Clara grabbed the basket with papers, 3 coins, the ribbon, and the jar with the cuttings. She wrapped the rose hips and slipped them in. She took one smooth white stone from the mantel and set it in her pocket. Elias stepped in, face dark with soot. "Time," he said. "No panic. Just a bell struck once." They climbed into the wagon. Elias turned up the ridge path that slanted away from the main draw. He drove slow where roots ran, fast where ground opened. Smoke thickened. Sparks skittered and died, wind shoved. Flames showed in the brush like teeth. A roar rose, a sound that made the chest forget how to widen. Elias set his jaw and skirted the black edge where fire had already eaten. "It won't cross the creek line easily," he said. Clara held the basket to her belly and breathed when the pain came, then let go when it passed. She watched his hands on the reins, steady even when a burning branch fell and made the horse dance. "Easy," he told the animal. "Good." They reached the shoulder below the stone hut. The wagon could go no farther. Elias set the brake. "From here we walk," Clara nodded. Her legs felt like wood. Heat pressed her back. He took the basket. She carried the cuttings with both hands. Together they climbed. The path cut between rocks and twisted pines. Air went thin and thick by turns. Twice she stopped for the tightness. He counted on her. A sheet of fire ran along the lower fence like a banner. Sparks blew up the slope. The hut's roof showed at last, low, dark, strong. "Almost," he said. A new pain took her, larger than the others. She closed her eyes to make room for it. When it loosened, she saw the door, black wood, iron latch. They reached it. He shoved it open. Cool, ash-scented dark received them like a cellar. He set the basket down and left the door just open for breath. "I'll start the stove," he said. "It draws and keeps smoke out." Clara leaned against the wall, hands on her belly. The child settled lower. Outside, the fire went by like a train with no end. She set the jar safe and looked at the small window. She nodded, breathing slowly, ready to endure and to welcome this. Elias struck a match. The stove took. He added 2 sticks and closed the damper. "We're here," he said, softer than the roar. "We're here." Heat moved outside the stone walls. Inside, the hut kept a small circle of lamplight and the soft click of the stove. Clara sat on the cot with her boots off and her shawl around her shoulders. She planted her feet and breathed low and steady, counting the rise and the fall. Elias set a wet cloth by the basin and turned the lamp down. He checked the basket and put the tiny dress near the stove to warm. He did not ask if she was afraid. He laid his hand palm down on the table so she could find it if she needed, and waited with her. The next wave came close and strong. Clara bent over it, mouth open, eyes closed. She listened to the stove tick. She felt the rough shawl under her fingers. When it eased, she let her jaw go loose and drank. Good, Elias said. One word solid. Another wave rose taller. She stood, braced her hands on the cot, and rocked her hips. The name they had chosen hovered in her chest like a small light. Rose, she whispered. Outside the wind turned. Sparks hit the stones and died. The cracked door breathed thin air. Tell me something plain, she said between breaths, he thought. South fence held, he said. Calves kept low. The creek ran where it should, she nodded. Facts steadied her. She took the next pain in her feet and then knelt on a folded blanket. Elias moved the basin near and set the lamp so it would not glare. He washed his hands and dried them slowly, as if showing there was time inside the storm. Soon the waves left little room between. She rode them, making the small sounds her body asked for. When fear climbed her throat, she looked at Elias's forearm, the scar by his wrist, the way his sleeve bunched when he shifted. And she remembered the ridge and the word again. Pressure changed. It moved down, wide and heavy. She felt a need like pushing against a door. She met it. The world narrowed to push and breathe, then rest, then push again. Elias said, yes, Lo. He folded a cloth and set it on her back. He did not crowd her. He watched and waited, steady as bedrock. The head, he said at last. Dark hair. Tears came without sobs. She thought of the 7 small stones on the ridge and felt them like a line of hands behind her, present for this crossing. Easy now, he said. Short breaths, she obeyed. The ring of burn came hot and bright, then softened as her body learned. She opened and did not fight it. Now, Elias said. She pushed with the sound of the stove and the name in her mouth. The pain broke like surf on rock. A weight slid free into the air, wet and new. A silence held. Then a small voice rose, sharp, fierce, alive. Clara laughed and wept at once. Her arms reached before her mind did. Elias wrapped the child in a towel and laid the bundle against her chest. Warm met warm. The cry softened into little chuffs. Hello, Clara said. She counted fingers because she had to. She felt the tiny heel press her palm. She kissed the damp hair. Elias turned, quiet and efficient. He banked the stove, tied a neat knot, and lowered the lamp. His hands shook once, then stilled. Is she? Clara began. She is, he said, and his voice carried a clean wonder. Strong, Rose. The name settled like a small flame that would not go out. Clara held the baby close and felt the skin-to-skin truth sing along her bones. Inside, a new weather started. Elias brought water. She drank. He set the tiny dress near and then hesitated. Later, he said. When it's time, Clara nodded. The baby rooted, found, and latched. Pain sharpened, then turned bright and bearable. Milk let down, first gift, first peace. Elias checked the door seam and listened. Front has passed, he said. We'll wait for ash to settle. Clara looked at him and saw a man changed by the room and the small, steady pull at her breast. Grief was still his, but its shape had shifted. Thank you, she said. He shook his head. Thank you for staying. I came because of fear, she said. I'm still here because of the quiet. They listened. The roar eased. The stove ticked. The baby drank, paused, sighed, and began again. When Rose slept, Clara leaned back. Elias set his coat under her knees. Ash began to fall as soft as winter. The hut breathed. Rest, he said. Clara closed her eyes with the baby on her chest and let the first hour of their life settle while the fire spent itself beyond them. For us. Dawn found them still in the stone hut. The fire outside had moved on, but ash drifted like gray snow. Inside, Clara lay with the baby close, warm skin to warm skin. She named her again in a whisper so the walls would learn it. Rose. The name felt like a promise the room could keep. Elias moved as if any loud act could break something holy. He set the water to warm and checked the door seam. The world had turned from roar to hush. He looked toward the tiny dress, then away, then back, and laid it across his arm like a folded prayer. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready," she said. He helped without hurry. When the small gown was on and buttoned, Rose's dark hair framed her face like dawn at a hill line. Clara laughed on a breath. She had not known laughter could be quiet and full at once. They wrapped the baby and ate a heel of bread between smiles that did not need words. When Rose made a small squeak, both of them looked up fast and then laughed again. "Front past," he said at the door. "Air is clearing. We can go when you choose. Soon," Clara said. She felt light and used, like a bell after ringing. A little more stillness, they rested. The stove ticked. Smoke thinned in the window. Clara dozed and stroked Rose's back. When they stepped out, the world looked new and old at once. Black lines traced the ground where fire had gone. The sky was rinsed. Pines at the far draw smoked. The house below had kept its shape, ringed by the bare earth Elias had cut. The sign at the ridge stood Rose holding fast. They walked slowly down the path. Elias carried the basket and tools. Clara carried the child. Heat still breathed from the soil in places. At the porch, the horse nickered. Elias touched its neck. He looked at the damp burlap on the windows and the soot line on the rail and nodded once. Inside, the lavender room was as they had left it. Clara sat, nursed the baby, and watched light settle across the floor. Peace spread in her bones. Elias brought clean water. He set the kettle on, then stood still. "I'll fetch the doctor," he said. "Quick there and back." Clara opened her mouth to answer, and saw him sag against the door frame as if a string had been cut. "Elias," he grimaced, not from pain, but from a deep hollow. "Smoke," he said. Just a minute, he took one step and his knees went wrong. He caught the table, missed, and went down slowly, careful even in falling. The room shrank. Clara felt the floor tilt. "Stay with me," she said. She laid Rose safe in the crib drawer that waited, tucked with a towel, then slid to the floor beside him. His face had gone the color of ash. His breath came quick and thin. She ran, poured water, brought a cloth, and set it cool on his neck. "Breathe," she said. Slow. She lifted the windows a finger, let clean air thread the room. His eyes found hers. He tried for a joke and chose truth instead. "Don't leave." "I won't," she said. She counted with him, matching his breath to hers the way he had matched hers in the night. She told him small things to hold him in the world. The ridge stands. The sign is straight. The hawk made a circle, Rose fussed. Her little cry pierced like a silver nail. Elias stirred as if pulled to the sound. "There," Clara said. "Listen to her. Come back to her." He closed his eyes, opened them, and drew a deeper breath. Color returned, slow as dawn to snow. She lifted his head onto a folded blanket. He drank in small sips and did the work of breathing until the work became plain again. "Better," he said at last. "Better," she answered, and tears came. She brought Rose and set the baby against his chest. Elias lay still, eyes wet. He did not speak for a while. The child made a small mouth and opened it like a fish kissing air. He smiled, light as a new leaf. "We're a house now," Clara said. "Not just walls," he nodded. When strength had climbed back into him enough to sit, he did, and they ate sweet porridge without much talk. Evening came. Elias lit the lamp. Clara watched the flame catch and steady. She laid a hand on his sleeve. He laid his on the table. Their fingers did not meet, but the space between them felt full of yes. Outside, stars began to show. Night held. They did not call the hushed silence anymore. They called it peace. The next day moved slowly and kindly. Elias kept to light work and listened when Clara told him to sit. He did not argue. He smiled with the shy look of a man learning his body's borders again. Rose slept between them in the lavender room, small fist against her cheek. The house learned its new steps. Water warming, bread rising, a laugh in the quiet. They walked to the ridge when the ground gave. The fire had licked and gone, leaving black scars and new shoots. The sign, Rose, still stood. Elias touched the low stone wall and nodded. The cuttings had lived. Tiny red points showed where buds would be. Clara set a hand on each marker, saying no names but meaning them. She did not try to speak anything holy. She only stood, held by wind and sky, and let grief and joy sit beside each other. Days fell into place. Elias spoke more. Not many words, but full ones. He told her where the creek ran fastest. He told her the year the snow broke fences clear to the road. He asked her if dumplings should be pinched or pulled. She said both, and he laughed. Rose grew steadily. She liked the sound of the clock and the rasp of Elias's whiskers when he kissed her head, which he did as if learning a hymn by heart. At night, when Clara woke to feed, Elias woke too. He checked the stove and the latch and sometimes read a few lines from the poem book in a whisper, as if giving the dark a gentle task. When spring came, the ridge bed flamed with small, stubborn color. Not many blooms, but enough. Roses opened like cups of hope. The scent was thin and clean. Clara cut one and set it by the photo on the shelf. The gentle-eyed woman looked less sad. Neighbors softened. The preacher and his wife came with a pie and stood a long time by the ridge. The boy who had tipped his hat brought a sack of nails back just to say hello to the baby. Even Pike passed slowly and kept his mouth careful. He tied fresh sugar at the gate and rode on. Elias fixed the porch step and hung a new bell. Clara planted beans and peas and a row of marigolds for cheer. She traded mending for milk when the cow ran dry. One bright day in late summer, Rose took 3 steps from the table to the chair. The room stopped to watch. Elias crouched with his hands out, eyes wet. "That's it," he said low. She fell against his chest and made a sound like a bird finding a nest. He looked over her head at Clara with a wonder that did not need words. They had crossed a river and found new land. Autumn brought gold. The orchard whispered again. They picked apples and laid them in straw. Pike came to trade a hinge and left with potatoes and a different face. Winter returned and did not scare them. They sealed the windows before the wind rose. They stacked wood and measured feed. On long nights, Clara told small stories from the boarding house, funny ones without sting. Elias told of the colt that followed him into the kitchen and would not go until it heard the kettle sing. They laughed and let the sound live. Snow melted into spring again. Roses sent up stronger shoots. This time the bed was filled. Red, pink, and white opened in a slow parade. Clara set a bloom on each marker and did not feel broken by it. She felt stitched. On a soft morning near the day they had first met, they walked the ridge as a family. Rose held a stick and called it her horse. Elias carried a spade for no reason but habit. Clara paused and laid a hand low on her belly. A small smile touched her mouth. Elias saw, and the shy, bright look returned. "Again," he said. "Again," she answered. They stood where the sun found them and let the wind braid around their legs. The house below looked like a promise a person could keep. The bell waited for the evening. Lavender leaned at the window. The ridge held both kinds of stones now, the ones that marked what had passed, and the ones that kept roots warm for what was coming. Summer dust lifted and settled, and peace learned all the doors here. If you felt the quiet strength in this story, if you want more frontier love told plain and true, stay with us. Hit subscribe, tap the bell, and share this with someone who needs hope that grows slow and holds fast, like roses on a windy ridge. Another tale waits by the fire. Don't miss it.